Do you find yourself with analysis paralysis when you try to pick a grain meal out? Because there's so many. Well, I have come up with 5 questions that you can ask yourself, and at the end of that, you will have the perfect grain meal for you. So stay tuned. We're going to go through 5 questions to ask yourself, and I'm going to explain to you why it's so important to ask each and every one of them before you make that big purchase. So grain meals are so popular right now. You may have noticed it's kind of hard to find them sometimes, but they're starting to come back in stock. And so I thought, well, I'm going to make this video. I've got a companion blog post I'm going to link in the description box below that you can go to have it written out, the questions and some more considerations. I went more in depth in the blog post, but let's just get started with this, because I know whenever I first bought my grain meal, the first one, the electric one, it was the Nutri-Mill Classic Impact Meal, and I've used it for years and years and years and would buy it all over again. But I didn't really know the difference between all the different ones that are out there, and why is this one so much more expensive? What does it do different? And all of that. So I'm going to take care of all of that, all those questions for you today. So before we start with the 5 questions to ask yourself, this is basically just going on the 2 different types of grain meals. I'm not doing brands. I'm not doing specific models. I'm just going on impact meals versus stone meals. And there are different impact meals. There's a couple, maybe 2 or 3. There are several stone meal varieties. So once you decide which type of grain meal will work for you, and then you can go into it and just look at that particular type and make a decision based upon that. So let's get started. Question number 1, I've got them down here, so you'll see me looking down because I can't remember that well, but I've got them written down here. The top 1 question that I think is important is, how much flour do you plan on milling, especially like at a time? And so a lot of things are going to play into this. How big is your family? How much bread are you going to be baking? Let's say that you bake several loaves of bread, a week, and you do it at one time. And so you have to do cups and cups of wheat berries at a time. That's important to know, because the impact meals, you can just fill up the hoppers on them, turn it on and walk away and just wait for it to make that sound that it's done. Now with a stone meal, you do have a lot less space to put the wheat berries in the little hopper. And so what happens is you have to kind of stay there nearby and keep feeding it. And so that is something you need to think about. Now, if you have a really small family, or you're like me and it's just me and my husband and I'm just making, 1 loaf of bread at a time or 1 batch of muffins or whatever, I can just pour exactly what I need in a stone meal hopper and have plenty. And so, it's just something you've got to kind of weigh it out. Now, there's people that just keep coming back and feeding the stone meal, and that works fine. You just got to kind of keep an eye on it, because it piles up in the bowl as you're milling the flour does, and you have to kind of watch it or it'll sometimes spill over. So, but that's an important question. Is this an exclusive, I'm only going to bake with fresh meal flour and I need a lot of it? Keep that in mind, because the impact meals are going to be able to handle so much flour at a time with you walking away. You don't even have to be there while it's milling. And that's something that comes into play. I know with me, if I'm doing a lot of baking, say for the blog, and I'm making several recipes that I'm going to freeze or whatever, I always just pour everything into the Nutri-Mill Classic and turn it on and walk away, because that way I don't have to deal with it. But keep that in mind. Okay, number 2. This one is probably the most important one. What's your budget? I know a lot of people say, there's no way I can afford one of these grain meals, and I totally understand, because I could not. At first, I had to save up for my Nutri-Mill Classic, and I got the refurbished one. I didn't even buy a brand new one. But I had, I think it was a week ago, I made a video, or 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I made a video about the manual grain meal that I have. That was my first grain meal. And it was I think like $150 at the time. I got a motor with it too, and it worked just fine. And I told myself that if I stuck with it, then I make the move to the electric, more expensive grain mill. But I was saving in the meantime. But it is an investment, and it's something that you need to know that you're going to do it, I think, because I'm like really frugal. And so you got to know that you're going to use it, spending that kind of money. And some of these stone mills get up to like $700. I mean, I can't even imagine. $300 is plenty expensive for me, but you know, there are people who just love that particular one, and it's like $700. And so if you have the money, I say definitely, you know, get that one. But you know, that's not something that was ever on my wish list. But you look at budget and you say, okay, I can't spend more than $300. Then you're 100% you're going to get an impact meal, because they run around $2.99. I have a coupon. It's always there. You can get $20 off, so that would make it $2.79, I think. I'll write it across the screen here. But the stone mills are more expensive. They start like over $400. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. Mock Mill has one that doesn't have the wood housing on it, and it's like $380 maybe. I'll put the amount here. And so, I mean, you know, it's not quite as expensive, but again, most people want the stone mills because of the way they look. And so, you know, you're not going to get that with that particular one. So keep that in mind. Budget probably is your very, very first question, and then move on to these next questions. I didn't do them in any particular order. That leads into the next one, space. Impact mills are a lot bigger than stone mills. Quite a bit bigger. And so I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. You're probably like, you say that all the time, but I'm going to say it. I'm going to kind of always push this on you. A grain mill that you have to take and put away and then get out and put, it's going to be hard for you to stick with that. You need something that is there, it's already plugged in, it's ready, and you just feed it and you get your flour. And so space is huge. You need to look around in your kitchen and say, I can handle this in my kitchen, but I do not have room for that. And so think about that, because I'm a big advocate for, let's say that you only have a budget of $2.99, but you really, really don't have room for that meal, and you really want a wooden meal. I say put that $2.99 in it. I'm going to go completely off track here, because I think it's kind of a helpful little thing to do. So I have set up with my bank, like lots of little accounts that I feed for certain goals. And so if I put $5 in there, and the reason I like it is because it's all on my banking app, and I can just say, okay, internal transfer of $10 into, now this isn't real, I'm making this up. I can't even think of anything, you know, new refrigerator, we don't need one, but let's just say, you know, new refrigerator. If I can I'll internal transfer money as I can to those. And that's how I do with purchases like a grain mill. If, say, I only have $50 this month, then I have that little tiny account that I went to my bank, and they actually will name it what I want them to, and so it shows up. And you can say, okay, I'm putting $50 in grain mill this month, and next month you may have 100, and you'd be surprised how fast that you can squirrel away. I'm a big advocate of squirreling away, so squirrel it away and get what you want, because you don't want to spend $300. I've had people send me messages and say, I bought that one, but I sent it back because it really wasn't, and I decided just to wait and save up for the one I wanted. So, but space is huge. So the little stone mills are tiny. You can just put them on the counter, plug them up, and they don't take up hardly any space. But if you have a really big sprawling kitchen, then that's not going to be a problem. You can get an impact meal and it's going to be just fine. All right, so let's move ahead. This one's a big one. Are you only going to be making bread, so you just need fine flour? Or do you want to experiment and make things like cracked or cream of wheat? Or do you want to crack grains for your chickens or things like that? that's very important because the impact meal is pretty much fine flour. Now, it has like a place where you can go like coarser, but it's not cracked grains at all. It's still more on the fine side of flour. Whereas a stone mill can go from cracked grains to super fine flour. And so keep that in mind. Look down the road and say, is that something that I'm going to want? Because ultimately, when I think of a purchase like this, make the one that's going to satisfy you from now on, and not just what I can get right now. Even though I did that, I can tell you that I do not regret that I bought the classic, because I have a kitchen where I can just leave it out and it's fine. But let's say that I would have been bringing it in and out and I wouldn't have stuck with it. That would have been $300 wasted. And so I look at it that way. Even if I have to spend more, what is actually going to get me to do this on a regular basis? And so again, if you want cracked grains, just start saving up for a stone meal, because you're not going to get that from an impact meal. But if you're like, no, I'm just going to make bread, muffins, pizza, whatever, I don't like cream of wheat, I don't have chickens, then definitely an impact meal will serve you just fine if you have room for it in your kitchen. All right, so the last one seems kind of frivolous, but I have found from a lot of you that this is actually really, really, really important. It's not something that's that important to me, but I have found that a lot of you, this is one of your top prerequisites for grain mill shopping, and that is aesthetics. So having your kitchen look a certain way, I get it. Like, I like mine to look a certain way, but I'm not like so into that I let it drive me into what to buy if it's not going to actually suit my purpose, or suit the purposes that I need it to. But if aesthetics is way up there on you, say that you have totally remodeled your kitchen and it's just got this feel, and you don't want a big white, appliance sit on your counter, then just go ahead and say, I'm saving up for a stone mill, because stone mills they're beautiful. I mean, you sit them out on your counter, and it is never going to be a thing where you're like, oh, I hate that I have that. No, it's not something you're going to take in and out of your kitchen, because it's just, it's a timeless looking, and it's just beautiful sitting on your counter. Okay, so once you've answered all 5 of those questions, what I would do is make a piece of paper and put each question, and then put 2 columns for impact stone, and mark the column. Whichever one gets the most marks, that's the one that you want to consider purchasing. In my opinion, after having grain mills for a long time, I can tell you these are the important questions. And so I hope that this was helpful if you are in that state of, oh, there's so many, I don't even know what's the difference. I hope that this helped you to get a little more clarity in what you're going to need in your kitchen. While aesthetics, again, may be important to you, just bear in mind that those other 4 questions, answer those 2. And if the impact gets 4 and aesthetics was the only one for the stone mill, it's up to you, of course, but it's quite a bit more money to buy the stone mills. And so, all right, well, I think that's it. Check the description box down below for a link to the blog post that goes a little more in depth. As far as I know, at the time of this recording, both of the Nutri-Mill grain mills are in stock. And so if you choose one of those, I do have a coupon code for $20 off, Rose20. You use it at checkout. It's perpetual. It's always available. And so that's a neat little perk if you are looking at getting a grain mill. All right, well, thank you all so much for joining me, and I hope that this was helpful. I will see you next week. Y'all have a great weekend.